The house smelled faintly of old wood and lemon cleaner. Nothing unusual, but each night the kitchen seemed alive. Sounds, movements, a presence. That's when her quiet life began unraveling. Would you stay if your child swore someone else lived in your kitchen? This story came from Claire, a divorced woman in her late 30s who lived with her 8-year-old daughter Lily in a small rental home in Portland, Oregon. She told me in a tired voice, almost whispering, as if afraid the words themselves could bring it back. It started on November 1st, 2022, around 11:18 p.m., Claire said. I was folding laundry in the living room when Lily came in. She asked why I had put a glass of milk on the counter for her when she was already in bed. But I hadn't. Claire brushed it off, assuming Lily imagined it. But when she went into the kitchen, there it was, a full glass of milk on the counter. That was the first strange thing, she told me. The next night, at 12:02 a.m., Claire heard soft tapping sounds. She thought it was the pipes, but Lily called from her room, frightened. "Mom, someone's in the kitchen." Claire grabbed her phone and went in. All the cabinet doors were wide open. The faucet dripped steadily, though she had tightened it earlier. She closed everything, tucked Lily back in, and tried to convince herself it was stress. That was the first suspense. On November 8th, at 1:33 a.m., she heard laughter, high-pitched, childlike, coming from the kitchen. Lily was asleep in her bed. Claire froze, then rushed in. Every chair around the table was upside down. That was her first jump scare. Terrified, Claire set up a small baby monitor camera. On November 10th, at 2:27 a.m., the monitor picked up movement. She watched as a shadowy figure leaned over the table and carefully placed a toy doll in the center. Lily didn't own that doll. That was the second suspense moment. Lily grew increasingly uneasy. One night she whispered, "Mom, the kitchen man says he's hungry." Claire's blood ran cold. "What kitchen man?" "The tall one who smiles too much." The next night, at 3:01 a.m., Claire heard chairs scraping violently. She ran in and saw every chair pulled out, as if someone had just stood up from a meal. The doll sat at one place, its head slowly turning toward her. That was the second jump scare. She grabbed Lily and called a neighbor, but when the neighbor arrived, everything looked normal. The doll was gone. The first thrill came on November 13th at 2:49 a.m. Claire heard the oven timer dinging. She hadn't cooked. In the oven sat a tray with raw meat placed neatly on foil. She swore she hadn't bought any. She slammed it shut, shaking. 2 nights later came the final jump scare. At 3:22 a.m., Claire awoke to Lily screaming. She ran to the kitchen. Lily stood on the counter, eyes wide, pointing at the dark corner near the fridge. "There! He's right there!" she cried. Claire saw it too, just for a second. A tall man-shaped shadow, head bent low, smiling impossibly wide. It darted across the room and vanished through the wall. That was the second thrill, and it nearly broke her. They left that house the very next day, breaking their lease. Claire swore she would never go back, but when I asked if it ever followed her, she gave a chilling answer. Sometimes I wake up at 3:22 a.m. in our new place. The chairs are pulled out, and Lily still talks about the kitchen man. It was in mid-October, the kind of nights when the air bites sharper, when the silence of the house feels louder than any noise. That's when their story began. Have you ever trusted family only to find the terror was never outside? This one was told to me by Sophia, the oldest of 3 siblings. She lived with her younger sister Emily and their brother Josh in a 2-story house in Cleveland, Ohio. Their parents had moved overseas for work, leaving the siblings together. It was October 14th, 2022, Sophia said. I was in the living room watching a late movie. Emily was upstairs. Josh was playing games on his computer. At exactly 12:21 a.m., I heard a noise from the kitchen. It wasn't dramatic, just the slow creak of the refrigerator door opening. Sophia thought maybe Josh had gone downstairs for a snack. She ignored it until 5 minutes later when Josh came down the stairs, yawning. "You eating again?" she teased. He frowned. "What? I've been upstairs the whole time." They went to check. The fridge door stood wide open, light spilling across the tiled floor. "That was the first strange thing," Sophia said. "We laughed nervously, closed it, and went back to what we were doing." But the next night, at 1:03 a.m., something worse happened. Emily screamed from her bedroom upstairs. Sophia and Josh ran up to find her trembling, pointing toward her door. "There was someone downstairs," she whispered. "I heard footsteps, heavy ones. Then the sound of dishes clinking together." Josh, ever the skeptic, grabbed a baseball bat and went down. He found nothing. But on the tabletop sat 3 plates, neatly laid out, each with a fork and knife beside it. "We hadn't done that," Sophia told me. "It was deliberate. It felt like someone, or something, had set the table for us." That was the first suspense moment. The following evening, at 12:48 a.m., Sophia decided to test it. She placed her phone on the counter, recording video before they went to bed. In the morning, she checked the footage. The video showed the kitchen dark and still until 1:12 a.m., when the cabinet doors began to swing open, one by one. A shadow crossed the room, low to the ground, crawling. Then the video cut off. Emily refused to sleep alone after that. They all stayed in the same room. 2 nights later, on October 18th at 2:07 a.m., came their first real scare. All 3 siblings were asleep in the living room when a violent crash woke them. The sound of every drawer in the kitchen slamming shut at once. Josh leapt up with a bat in hand, while Emily and Sophia clung to each other. He flicked on the hallway light and froze. On the wall, written in something dark and sticky, were 3 words: "Eat with me." That was their first jump scare. They cleaned it with shaking hands, trying not to think about what the substance was. Emily swore it smelled like iron. The second suspense moment came just 2 nights later, on October 20th, at 1:59 a.m. Sophia couldn't sleep, so she scrolled on her phone in the living room. Suddenly, she heard whispering. It came from the kitchen, low, urgent, like 2 voices overlapping. She couldn't make out the words. She slowly stood and peered in. The whispers stopped. The microwave clock blinked 1:59 over and over, as if stuck. She shut her eyes, heart hammering, and whispered, "Please stop."
The whispers resumed for 3 seconds, then silence. She never told Emily or Josh about that night until much later. Their second thrill peak came on October 22nd at 3:14 a.m. They were all together when the power went out. The house plunged into darkness. Then, from the kitchen, came the unmistakable sound of someone dragging their fingernails across the refrigerator door. Slow, deliberate, metallic. "Do you hear that?" Emily whimpered. Josh whispered, "Stay behind me." They listened as the dragging stopped. Then 3 hard knocks rattled the fridge. That was their second jump scare. The power returned minutes later. On the fridge door, 5 long scratches glistened, as though carved fresh into the metal. They considered leaving, but with their parents abroad, they had nowhere else to go. So they did the only thing they could. They bought a motion-activated camera. On October 24th, at 12:33 a.m., the camera finally gave them proof. The footage showed a tall, thin figure crouched on the kitchen counter, its head tilted unnaturally as it watched the siblings pass by in the hallway. Its limbs seemed too long, fingers tapping against the counter like it was waiting. At one point, it leaned toward the lens, its mouth opening wider than humanly possible, and whispered something. The audio only picked up static. That was their third jump scare. When they replayed the video later, the audio contained something faint, like a distorted sentence. Emily swore it said, "Sit with me." The last thrill peak came on October 26th at 2:45 a.m. They were all asleep when a loud bang echoed. They rushed downstairs to find every cupboard wide open, plates stacked neatly in the center of the table. But this time, there were 4 plates. They were 3 siblings. Someone, or something, had set a 4th place. Emily broke down crying. Josh tried to act tough, but Sophia said she saw his hands shaking. They packed bags and stayed with a friend the next night. When they returned to grab the rest of their things, the kitchen table was still set. 4 plates, 4 forks, 4 knives. Only this time, there was also a note. "Don't leave me alone again." Sophia swears to me she still dreams of that table. She says she sometimes wakes up at exactly 3:14 a.m., hearing faint whispers in her ear. "Eat with me."
It was late September, the kind of night where rain tapped against the kitchen window like impatient fingers. Their apartment felt safe, ordinary and warm, until something shifted that should not have. Would you dare to check your kitchen if objects moved when no one was there? The story was told to me by Daniel, a quiet, rational man who doesn't believe in ghosts. He and his wife Marissa had moved into a second-floor apartment in Chicago on September 22, 2022. He swore he never believed in strange things until those nights that changed his life. "It was around 11:34 p.m., he said. "We had just finished dinner. I put the dishes in the sink. Marissa was in the bedroom scrolling through her phone. That's when I heard the first sound. It wasn't loud, just a soft scrape, like a chair leg moving across the tiled kitchen floor. Daniel assumed Marissa had come back out, but when he stepped into the kitchen, it was empty. The chair was slightly pushed out from the table, but he thought maybe he had left it that way. He brushed it off and went to bed. The next evening, at 12:17 a.m., something stranger happened. Marissa woke Daniel. "Did you just go into the kitchen?" she whispered. "No,"
he said, rubbing his eyes. Her voice was uneasy. "I heard the fridge door open." They both got up. The fridge door was closed, but on the counter, a glass they had washed earlier now sat half filled with water. Neither of them had touched it. "That's when I laughed," Daniel told me. "I told her maybe she had done it without realizing, but she shook her head. Her face told me she was dead serious." For a few nights, nothing happened. Then came September 27th, 2022, at 2:09 a.m. Daniel remembered it clearly because it was the first time he felt fear. He heard utensils clattering, not a drop, not a slip, a deliberate sound like someone rummaging through the cutlery drawer. He rushed in, heart hammering, only to see the drawer wide open, forks and knives scattered across the counter. Marissa stood in the doorway, pale. "Daniel, this isn't funny." "I didn't touch it," he said firmly. They cleaned up, unsettled, and decided to buy a small camera for the kitchen. On September 29, at 3:02 a.m., the camera gave them answers, but not the ones they wanted. The video showed their kitchen chairs moving slowly, one by one, as if dragged by invisible hands. Then a shadow passed across the fridge, long, thin, and not shaped like either of them. "That was our first real scare," Daniel admitted. "I felt my stomach twist. It wasn't random anymore." Still, he tried to reason. Maybe the building had electrical issues. Maybe it was the camera glitching. But the next night erased that excuse. October 1, 2022, at 12:44 a.m. Daniel and Marissa were in bed when they heard it. The sound of someone breathing. Not loud, not soft, but steady, coming from the kitchen doorway. Marissa grabbed Daniel's arm. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. He nodded. He forced himself up, walked to the kitchen entrance, and froze. There was nothing there, but the chair closest to the doorway scraped violently backward, as if someone had shoved it out of the way. That was their first jump scare. So sudden, Marissa screamed, and Daniel slammed the bedroom door shut. They barely slept that night. The next evening, determined not to give in to fear, Daniel stayed awake in the living room. At 1:56 a.m., he saw movement out of the corner of his eye. The kitchen light flicked on by itself. He stood up slowly. "Who's there?" he called. The faucet turned on full blast. Water gushed into the sink, splashing violently. Daniel's chest tightened. He ran in, turned it off, but the handle resisted, as if someone was pulling against him. That was the second jump scare. Marissa begged him to call the police. He did, but when officers checked, there was no sign of forced entry, no wiring issues, nothing unusual. They told the couple stress could cause people to see things. But the final straw came on October 4, 2022, at 3:11 a.m. The camera they had set up again recorded something chilling. At first, the video showed the usual, the fridge opening, the chairs moving. But then, clear as day, a figure walked into frame. It wasn't Daniel. It wasn't Marissa. It was a man, tall and gaunt, wearing clothes that looked decades old. His face was blurred, almost smeared, but he stood directly in front of the camera and smiled. Then he leaned forward until his face filled the screen. The footage cut to static. That was the third jump scare, Daniel whispered to me when he told me the story. We weren't just imagining it anymore. Something or someone was there. The couple left the apartment the next morning, but not before one last horrifying moment. As they packed, Marissa opened a kitchen cupboard to grab a mug. Inside, taped to the inner wall, was a torn piece of paper with messy handwriting. It read, "I like watching you sleep." They moved out within days. The landlord swore no one else had a key, and no tenant before had complained. Daniel ended his story with a shake of his head. "I thought the camera would give me peace. Instead, it gave me proof I wish I never had." And when I asked him if he still had the footage, he said quietly, "No, it disappeared from the card. Only the audio remains. And if you listen, you can still hear the breathing."